All right, so let's start. Okay. So today we'll be looking at some aspects of thread scheduling and Linux scheduling. We'll not go into great details of Linux scheduling, okay, but we'll discuss only at abstract level, top level, right? And I will leave it to you to go into details and find out more about it. Okay, so today's lecture is primarily from this book for it is Linux programming part, Linux scheduling part, and some contents of course have taken from Tenenbaum's book and from Berkeley's lecture slides. Okay, so if you want to learn about Linux programming, then you need to read this book. Note that there is a two types of Linux programming, Linux scheduling, not Linux programs, Linux scheduling. One is the old version, okay, and then the new version. New version came about, I guess, around 2006 or 7, and that's more evolved and better, right? So we'll today consider only later one. Okay, the older one is of course based on priority queues that we have studied earlier, right? So we'll not go into that, but we'll look at only aspects of new Linux programming, which is very interesting actually. We'll look at some how it differs from traditional scheduling algorithms. Okay, so before that, let's revise what we have done. We have studied a first come first serve, and we have seen there is a problem of convoy effect, and it's the simplest one, of course, simple to implement. Then we've seen that shortest job first, and all this is for non-preemptive systems. Okay, so this gives optimal result. Okay, however, it's not possible always to use this because most of the systems are need faster response time, hence they need to be preemptive. When we say preemptive, it means a task can be moved out of CPU, okay, when time quantum is over, and then another job will be brought in. Okay, and then we have studied shortest remaining time first. Now this is a preemptive version. So when job is in execution, it's how much time is left out is calculated. If it is lower than all other jobs, that for all other jobs, and it continues. Otherwise, the one which is lowest, shortest remaining time is put into CPU and then executes, right? So we have studied all that. We have seen round robin. This is a very good method, and many of the algorithms follow this in some way or other. Okay, because this is absolutely fair algorithm. Okay, so if there are n jobs, put them in a round, serve them in a round robin fashion. Okay, so it does not assign any priority to any task. Okay, and so this nice one. So we most of the scheduling algorithm uses this in background somewhere or other, right? So it is algorithms are based on this one and many others, but there will always be a flavor of round robin in most of the scheduling algorithms. And then we have seen a multi-level queue scheduling, which is strict priority. Again, note that this is actually a round robin at a priority level. Okay, and then we have seen that there is jobs which are lower priority are they will starve if they don't get chance. So they have to be lucky to actually get served. Okay, and then this also can cause priority inversion. And then we have seen multi-level feedback queue, where priority of if a job consumes certain portion or a time quantum, then moves to next level and so on, and time quantum also increases. Okay, but first the priority one jobs are handled. Then when these are all over, then it chance comes to level 2 and so and 3 and so on. Note that I've changed the diagram here. Actually, I've taken it from different source, and now instead of first come first serve, it's the one with some other basically priority 4 is with 80 time slice. So if you increase the time slice very large, then actually it may resemble as a first come first serve. So first come first serve is not necessary, it's just for illustration purpose we have used that. Okay, all right, then we have seen that a lottery scheduling, where a job whom we want to give priority or we want to give more CPU time will be given more lottery tickets. Okay, and one of the lottery tickets is drawn from random in random, and then the one whatever lottery ticket comes, that job corresponding to that lottery ticket, the job that holds a lottery ticket will be given chance to run. So if you want to prioritize short processes, then give more lottery tickets to short processes like interactive process and so on. So this is interesting method, but it uses randomness, right? Okay, so that was it. To summarize, scheduling algorithm we studied so far. First come first is simplest. It minimizes overhead. Now, if task has variable in size, first come first serve can have very poor response time, right? Because of convoy effect. If larger job comes in front, then a small jobs will queue up, and overall response time, average response time will reduce to very low, to very high. Okay. Shortest job first is non-preemptive method, and it's optimal, right? So average response time is low. Okay, and then we have studied round robin method, which is very interesting and nice. It is a very most fair algorithm, but at the same time, if tasks are of the same size, then average response time suffers, right? Okay, we have seen that. However, round robin avoids starvation. And then we have seen multi-level feedback queue scheduler, which achieves balance between responsiveness and low overhead and fairness. Okay, there was one question yesterday about what will happen if context switching, if jobs are context switch very fast. Okay, or context basically time quantum that's available to a job is less than what is required to run any instruction, a simple instruction, right? Then how do we achieve atomicity? Okay, so that was a question. So answer is that if you decide to do that, then you can't achieve. Okay, another answer for this could be that when you see that what is needed to achieve, see something that is minimum needed to have a lock instruction execution, right? That is non-atomic. This is atomic, and to okay, so the basic instruction for that we have seen test and set, and then compare and swap. Okay, now hardware guarantees that this will be there will be no preemption in between. Okay, it is atomic. Now this is minimum guarantee that hardware gives, and how does it achieve that? We have seen the method, right? So by disabling interrupts and so on. So if you to come back to the question, that if you decide that instructions time quantum is very, very, very short, close to zero, then nothing much can happen, right? So that's not the way OS is designed. So OS is designed, when scheduling algorithms are designed, they are based on the years of simulation and then trying to optimize it. So theoretically, yes, you can do anything, but practically OS possibly is the most practical artifact design in comp science. Okay, it's absolutely practical because it has to look at thousands of things before any decision about scheduling can be done. Okay, this reason scheduling is very, very interesting, and at the same time could be very complex. Okay, any question? No?
No, sir.
Okay, all right. So now we have not discussed so far about thread scheduling. We have in general talking about scheduling, right? What do you think about thread scheduling versus process scheduling? Any thought?
We have to think about scheduling threads of the same process as well as different processes.
Yes, very good. Okay. All right. Hey, okay. So you have to also think about where threads are implemented. Okay, whether user level thread or kernel level thread. Okay, all right. Hey, just wanted to know one thing. Okay, all right. So okay, all right. So let's continue. Maybe people can go through this lecture again. So now it depends whether we are scheduling a kernel level thread or user level thread. That's one answer, right? Okay, but however, the basic difference is that thread level switching, if requires what? Less effort. In general, if you switch threads in a process of a process, then work required is less, because you don't have to move address space, bring in new address space, you don't have to change the cache, etc. Okay, cache to great extent, because all many things may remain the same. All right, so it is less expensive if we are switching within threads of a process. And process, of course, switching is more expensive in general, right? But if you switch between from one thread of one process to other thread of other process, then again it's expensive. Basically, you'll have to bring in the whole process in. Okay. All right, because the second process which is brought in is executing in different contexts, and that the whole context has got to be brought in. So now scheduling, when we are using user level scheduling, then user level thread scheduling, it means that threads are created in runtime library here, right? So kernel is not aware of existence of threads. So kernel knows only about a process. So it allocates a process for certain period of time quantum. Within that time quantum, user level threads can be switched if the runtime scheduler wants it. Okay, so there must be a runtime scheduler, runtime system here within the process. Okay, and that runtime scheduler job is to pick up thread. But note one thing: if a thread here, so let's say first thing is that let's say process A is scheduled by kernel level scheduler, because kernel level scheduler can schedule only at the level of process. Okay. Okay, now runtime scheduler picks up the threads. Note that there is no clock available to runtime environment or runtime system. So if a thread starts running, then it will continue to run. So there's a problem. Okay, so at most it can run for a quantum, and then when the process is switched out and again after some time brought in, then same thread starts running. Okay, until its execution is over, or it does IO, or it yields. Okay, so that's the only problem. So the possible once thread process A is scheduled by kernel level scheduler, and then there are multiple threads inside that, which is A1, A2, A3, A4. Then one possible way is that A1, A2, A3, then A1, A2, A3, and so on. All right, so it cannot, and then this process B has a threads B1, B2, B3, etc. And this is not possible, right? A1, B1, A2, B2, A3, B3. Basically, any thread within a process in the time quantum given to that process can be scheduled by runtime scheduler, however with some limitation that we have discussed. And then this runtime scheduler can use any algorithm it wants, like round robin or whatever it decides at process level. So process level optimizations can be done. Okay, any question on this one?
Sir, where is the runtime clock has been managed?
There is no runtime clock. That's what we discussed, right?
So if there is
Clock
no,
is yeah.
so if there is no runtime clock, then if A1 runs completely, then how A1 will run again in the possible section?
No, so basically there is a context. So basically, a scheduler has challenges then, right? Because see, there won't be a timer interrupt, inside. Say a quantum is given to a process, and then a runtime scheduler, as a part of the process, then picks up a thread, and thread runs. Now, as long as thread runs, it cannot do anything. Okay, how can you switch it? Because the only way kernel, for example, in kernel, context switching is possible through, kind of clock interrupts. Okay, so the limitation here is that runtime scheduler has very limited opportunity to do the local context switching from one thread to another.
Okay.
All right, so this that's the reason. See, only way is that thread has to yield.
Yes.
Okay, all right, very good question though. All right, so now let's look at, but this is, of course, this can be done, but most of the kernels today don't use it. They don't create threads at user level. Okay, so threads are created with kernel level, and these each thread is an entity in itself. Okay, so kernel then does not, in idealistic way, does not distinguish between a thread of a process, say A, versus a thread of some other process. Okay, so for example, there is a thread A1 here, and there is a thread called B2, then A2, A3, etc. Then all these threads are visible to kernel, and it can choose any one of them. Okay, so now there are many advantages and as well as disadvantages, right? I mean, of course, kernel knows, so kernels may want to optimize, but totally depends on design of algorithm, right? So when context switch happens between, say, thread A1 to B1, of course, context switching overheads are higher. Okay, so there are mechanism to also, kind of improve the algorithm, but at kernel level, kernel can decide. Okay, all right. One advantage we have seen that when one thread does IO, okay, then a kernel can decide to run second thread of the same process. While in case of earlier case, user level threads, if a thread does IO, then the whole process is blocked because the kernel is not aware of the threads. It only knows that the process has done the IO. Okay, so there's one advantage. We have studied this earlier as well, right? Okay, so the Linux kernel is it does scheduling based on kernel level threads. So Linux creates kernel level threads. It means it's aware of all threads of all processes, and thus and treats them as an individual entity and does scheduling. All right. Any question? All right. Shall we move ahead? Okay. So let's discuss in very brief completely fair scheduler, and this is a new one. And it has come out of a lot of research. So I would request you to find out, maybe I should give you assignment on that, to find out scheduling algorithm used in Linux, old version, new, and Windows, and compare them. So this will help you to go deeper. Okay. So the scheduling policy attempts to satisfy conflicting goals. Of course, all schedulers try to optimize on certain parameters, right? So the goal is that fast process response time. Actually, this is goal for almost all schedulers of all almost all interactive systems. Okay. And second goal is, of course, maximal system utilization or throughput. It's very widely, is kind of very broad goal. Okay, when we say throughput, in general, we say more number of processes should complete in a unit of time. Okay, but in general, it's more towards utilization. So when we say it should give fast response time, then kernel has to favor something, right? And here Linux kernel favors IO bound processes over processor bound processes. So it means gives more attention or more time quantum to IO based process, or prioritizes IO based processes, because IO based processes do some work, computation, and then goes out of the processor to do IO, right? And then a next process can be brought in. So, and these are IO bound processes are generally interactive processes. So these are given priority. So Linux gives priority to this, but it does it in very creative manner. Unlike we have seen shortest job first or shortest remaining job first, those are not very elegant, because it can cause starvation. Okay, so now here Linux does the scheduling, or it favors IO bound process in such a way such that it does not cause starvation. Okay, all right, or in other words, it does this thing in very creative manner. Second, most of the scheduler we have seen does not give any importance to real-time jobs. Okay, when we say real time, it means that job must complete within some deadline. So when there is a real time job or process, it is always associated with a deadline, and then that process must complete or must give results before the deadline. Okay, all right. So now of course, pure real-time systems or pure real-time scheduler will look at the deadline of individual process and do scheduling based on that. So of course, we have not studied that. But Linux does not do that, but it prioritizes the processes that are considered as real-time processes, and it is left to users or kernel to define priority levels for these processes that we'll study later. Okay, so it is a kind of priority based scheduling. Okay, and it is a preemptive scheduling. Of course, this point we have studied, it is a thread based scheduling. Okay, and we are interested in only two states here in scheduling algorithm, which is blocked state and runnable state. Okay, so for all calculation, etc., these two states are considered. Okay, now this little detail here. Okay, so CFS, which is completely fair scheduling algorithm. Oh, it came in 2007. So it was introduced in 2007. So almost like 15 years back. So now there is various ways in which it can be configured. Okay, so it can be configured to run on batch systems, or it can be configured to run on a normal system like our laptops. Okay, so we are interested in this one. Okay, all right. Okay, any question up to this point? All right. Okay. So now this algorithm is based on ranking processes based on their worth. So that's interesting, their worth, right? And the need for processor time. If they need more processor time, say for example, real-time systems, real-time processes, then they need to be given more process time. Or it is IO process, then it should be given more process time, etc. Right? So of course, this point we have studied. Real-time processes have higher priorities than all normal processes. Fine. So if we give higher priority to real-time process, they will finish faster. Okay, so possibly within deadline. So the Linux kernel does not guarantee that they will all finish within the deadline, but prioritizes real-time processes, scheduling of real-time process. Okay. All right. Any question? No? All right. So now Linux kernel implements two separate priority ranges because it has to define which process is important and what is less important, right? For example, real-time processes are more important. So there must be some number associated with which is priority number, which we call as real-time priority number. And then we also define a nice value. So basically two ranges of values are there. First is real-time priority values ranges, which real-time processors are assigned in certain range, and then nice values which are normal processors are assigned. Now normal processors also can have priorities, right? For example, as we say, short interactive process can be given more priority. Okay, so now let's look at first at real-time priority. Now here the range is from 0 to 99. It means that we are creating 99 categories of processes. It means that process, which is value 99 has the highest priority. Okay, what does it mean? It will be given more CPU time. Okay, all right. And then all real-time processes are at higher priority than the normal processes. And then values which are for real, the value ranges, priority value range for real time, and the values for normal one are disjoint. This is disjoint set. Okay, so basically real-time values have higher priority than non-real-time one. Okay, or normal. All right, so keep this in mind. So now in your Linux system, if you want to see what is real-time priority of a process, Okay, of course, I mean, when I tried to run this on my system, I couldn't find any real time because there was no real time process that was running at that time. Okay, you'll have to run it on Linux because it does not work even on Mac. Okay, I tried running it on Mac, it didn't work. So then it's working on if you create a VM and then run terminal on that, and it will work. So if you run this command, then you will see this kind of output. And then if you see real time RTP PRIO, real time priority, and you can see these values here. This is the highest priority, right? For example, it is for Watchdog. Watchdog is, yeah, here it will be 99 and so on. So many applications may be running by OS, etc., or by user, which will have very high priority of like say 99 and so on. Of course, these are all kernel processes. Okay, so you can try this. Okay, then second value, which is for kind of normal ranges, is called nice values. Okay, for certain reasons, these numbers varies from -20 to +20 with default of 0. So most of the process that we create have default of 0. Okay. So the one which is highest priority is -20 and lowest is +19 or 19. Okay. Now this is Linux designers have decided to do it in this way for certain reasons. Okay, so we are not going to say that while real-time values are between 0 and 99 and these values are from -20 to 19, possibly it helps in calculation, or we can dig it out and see, go to design and see that why these have been chosen. But many authors say that these can be also normalized in certain ranges. From 0 to 99, if it's from 0 to 99, this could be from 100 to whatever, but 100, yeah, it could be 100, and so 100 will be highest and this will be lowest and so on. All right, so all right, so process with lower nice values, that's higher priority, receive larger portion of system's processor compared to process with higher nice values. That's interesting. So it means that the processes which have lower nice value, okay, get more CPU time. That's all it says. It does not say that this will be scheduled more frequently. Okay, so when the time, so I will just jump ahead and say, when processes with the lower nice values, which are not so nice to others, okay, and those that need more CPU time, okay, will get larger chunk at a time. Okay, this is interesting because so far we have studied in other scheduling algorithms, the time quantum given to a process is fixed. Okay, so it means that, if you have multiple queues, as we have studied in MFQ or strict multi-level scheduling, the one at the lowest level also gets the same time quantum as the one at the highest level, but the one at the lowest level gets less often the CPU time. Now here we are telling differently. We are telling the one with less priority or less value of sorry, the one which is less priority, which is the highest value here, okay, will get less quantum of CPU time when scheduled, while in other cases, I'm repeating, everyone gets the same time quantum. All right, so Now, of course, different Linux systems use this nice value differently. Okay, in Linux, it's a control over proportion of time slice. So if nice value is lower, it's less nice. It means that it needs more, is higher prioritized. It means that it should get more. The chunk given to it, or time slice given to it, or time quantum given to it will be more compared to one with higher nice values. Okay, any question? Are you able to understand? Who can tell me? Deep Desai, are you there? Deep Desai,
Excuse me, sir.
are you there? No, your mic is off. So okay.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, could you again repeat the nice value? Means I do not completely get.
Okay. Let me just ask you, what's your name?
Rishabh, sir.
Okay. The first thing is that you asked Deep to call me after the class. Okay. All right. So what is
Okay,
a
sir.
nice value? Is basically way to give priority. And this can be defined by kernel, or it can be defined by user. Okay. So basically, if you are very ordinary process, you may not need too much of CPU time. Then you say that, look, I am nice. I will use less CPU time and give others more CPU time. Okay. So okay. All right. So basically, I need less priority. So I need less time slice. Okay. So don't get confused with the word nice value and its ranges. You simply treat the range as less priority and higher priority. Okay. Okay. So if basically it says that I am positive about others, I want to help others, so I will take less time. So I will try to set my value it to be higher side. Set 20. When it's at 20, then I will get very small portion of time slice, for which I will be given the CPU. If I think that I need more CPU time, or if a kernel thinks that I need more CPU time, then it will set a value such that I get more CPU time when I am scheduled in. Okay, so it sets if it's a -20, then I'm less nice to others. It means I want to grab the maximum portion, or big portion, not maximum. I want to have the very big portion of time slice, or time quantum. Okay, that's it. Don't think of negative and positive values. That's the reason it can be normalized in the same ranges as 0 to 99. And so only thing you remember is that how much time of CPU a process will get in terms of quantum when scheduled at a time, okay, can be set. Okay, now OS can change these nice values also. All right. Okay, so let's move ahead, then you can understand it. So if you run this in a Linux program ps-el, then you can see the nice values here. This I have run in on my Mac processor. Okay, ideally you should run it on Linux machine. Since Mac uses Linux, but a variation of that, so I could see this, but ideally I should run it on terminal on Linux machine. Okay, all right. So this is a nice value. So you can see all nice values are 0. It means that all processes that I am running in my machine are actually these are default values. Okay. Now if the nice value is minus whatever, then of course those values, those processes will get more time quantum when they are allocated. And if the value is say more than 0, then they will get less time quantum from the normal processes or default process. Okay, you understand it now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. So now let's come to algorithm in very brief. So it means that when a scheduler schedules a process or a thread, it does not say that your time quantum is fixed, unlike other scheduling algorithm where the time quantum is fixed. Okay, time quantum, let's assume 20 millisecond or 10 millisecond or whatever, right? So in most of the other schedulers, the time quantum is fixed. The process given time, say 10 milliseconds. If there is enough compression, it can use it fully, or it can do IO call. Then it gets context switch, or it does yield, it gets context, but it has right over 10 milliseconds. Okay, here CFS does not give 10 milliseconds to all. It gives whatever time it decides based on the nice value and other parameters. Okay, so we'll look at this. So time slice is not fixed. That's one important thing. And this is a major change from other OSs. And second thing is that there is no explicit priorities. What does it mean? It means that priority of a thread or process will change over time. Okay, if you fix the priority, then there is a starvation. As we have seen earlier, right? There are multiple priority queues, and short jobs are given highest priority, and short jobs keep coming. So there will be starvation at the process at lowest level. Okay. So the amount of time given to a task is computed dynamically as scheduling context changes. What is scheduling context? Everything that happens in a system. So number of processes are there, what kind of processes are there, and so on. It changes. Then amount of time also changes that is given to a process. So let's assume, to simplify things, let's assume that process starts running and it is given quantum of say 4 milliseconds. And then suddenly there is a rush of more threads and processes in the system because of something. The next time when it is scheduled, because context has changed, it may not be given 4 milliseconds. Or say 10 millisecond, whatever. If you decide the 10 millisecond should be given, is given first time, next time it may not be given because their context is totally changed. Okay. So now let's look at top view of our abstract algorithm. We are not going details. We don't have so much time, but if you want, you can go through the book. Okay, because it will take long time to go through complete algorithm, but at the top level, try to understand the concept, and details you can always find it out. Okay, I will take 10 more minutes to finish. Okay, CF is designed to approximate perfect multitasking. Okay, when we say perfect multitasking, so this is the aim. Okay, so basically consider a processor P which is idealized in a, so think of an ideal processor or imaginary processor that can execute multiple tasks simultaneously. Normally, if you see physical processor, it can execute one task at one time, but think of a processor given 2 tasks, it can run 2 tasks parallelly. Okay, Now, if there are two tasks, both run at the same time, each will receive 50% of processing power. Okay, so imagine that we want to achieve this. Okay, just imagine. Okay, so this we want to achieve. Okay, so CFS scheduler has target latency. Again, imagine that it's a very small duration, some time, such that every runnable processes gets at least one turn. You know what? So let's assume there are 10 processes. So this is a very small time, but it can give one turn to each of the 10 processes. Okay. All right. Now you decide. Now this target latency is not fixed. Okay, so you'll have to take, so for example, a system takes 20 milliseconds target latency. Okay, and then if there are n jobs, then each will get 1 by nth slice of target latency. Okay, let's assume that is a 20 milliseconds. Okay, this target latency is 20 milliseconds, or we can call it epoch also, right? Or a time period of 20 milliseconds. And there are 4 jobs, so each will get slice of 5 milliseconds. Okay, now if number of jobs are more, then each will get, you know, if the number of jobs are 5, then it will get 4 milliseconds. If the number of jobs are 10, each will get 2 milliseconds. Okay, so note that 1 by nth slice of this is not fixed, it depends on n, because n keeps changing. Is the system context, right? Okay, so now what do you learn about this? Now this, once we fix this and the number of processes are there, then each will get a slice of that. Okay, now this slice we weigh with nice value or real time value, right? So now ideally it should get say for example 5 millisecond. Each process should get 5 millisecond, but now let's look at nice value and say that based on nice value, this period can be less and more. Okay, so let's go ahead. Okay, are you able to understand it in principle? Yes, no? Anyone?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's go ahead and then maybe. Okay, so now each of these n tasks will contain for processor, because at a time there are n tasks, and then we have decided on this period, okay, which we call as target latency. Okay, all right. So now traditional nice value is used to weigh the 1 by nth slice. So let's assume there are 4 jobs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 jobs. Okay, and ideally they should get this much, but not all jobs are equal importance. Okay, so now we can use this nice value or real time priority value to change this. So now let's say the first job has higher nice value, it means that it does not want CPU for a very long time, so we can use that weight, and now time slice it will be less than which it will get if each job gets equal time slice, or is less than, for example, this is 20 overall, and each will get, if there are 4 jobs, it should get 5 milliseconds. Now based on nice value, it can be reduced to 2 or 3 or whatever. Okay, so now it means that first job gets only 2 milliseconds, and now depending on other job, they will get, you know, whatever time slice based on their nice values. Okay. Okay, and if situation is that when this is over, all 4 jobs completes and still time is left, then again some period is decided. Okay. Okay, so the next cycle starts. Now let's assume that number of jobs go up. Say instead of 4 jobs, now it becomes say 10 jobs. And this period is fixed. Then each job will get very small portion, say 2 milliseconds, which is not enough. Okay, then what should be done? Okay, so the OS then say that there is a values which is called minimum granularity. It means that each job should get some minimum time on CPU, and it says at 4 milliseconds. So when n goes up and total time divided by n becomes less than 4 milliseconds, then it has to do something. Okay, and there is, so it means that now fairness goes for toss here. Okay, now so in the next cycle, what will do, it will increase the value of this period depending on number of jobs. What do you call is target latency? Okay, all right. So that's one way of giving more priority to jobs which are defined as nice values, etc., etc., right? Okay, but is it the whole story? No. Okay, now there is of course queue of jobs with certain nice values, and they have also run for a certain period of time, and they are available in ready queue. Then what is to be done? Then OS needs to pick up the one which has run for the least period of time. So note that the 2 ways of prioritization. One is based on the nice value, etc. So the one which needs more time, which has less nice value, will get more portion of CPU, or time slice will be more. Second is that which one of these should be scheduled next. That's based on who has run the least period of time. Okay, so for that there is a concept called virtual runtime, which is called VR runtime, and then there is a data structure, so keep track of that. Okay, and how do we calculate runtime? It's based on, is a weighted function of actual runtime normalized with number of runnable processes, because value of n keeps changing. Okay, so basically this thing is the process that has run for less time must be given priority. That's it. Okay, all right. So now we can see this algorithm works very interestingly, that first based on nice value which is defined by user or OS, or is being real time, more the slice time is decided, how much time quantum is given. So more time quantum or less time quantum depending on the priority that's assigned in the beginning to the process. Okay, and second level of prioritization comes in if there are multiple processes available. One of them has to be chosen which is going to be the next, and we don't have multiple levels of queues that we have seen earlier. Then OS picks up the one which has run the least. Okay, all right, that's the algorithm. Okay, this point we have already discussed. So any question on this one? Is it complex?
A little bit, sir.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it will take time, plus go through slides and go through book, and you will find that See, remember there are two things. First thing is that processes which are real time or more important should be given more time slice. The earlier algorithm that we have studied, time slice given to each process is same. Okay, here time slice also varies. Okay, and the second thing is that fine, when I am scheduled, I am given more time slice, for example. When I am out of the CPU, I am available in ready queue. Okay, and there are many jobs in ready queue. Which one now OS will pick up? It's not first come first serve, it's not round robin. It will find out the one which has run the least. It will pick that up and schedule it. So these are the two important things you just need to remember. The rest all is detail. How will you find out which has run the least? Then OS has to keep track how much it has run. Okay, and how much it has run when the number of jobs were less, and how much it has run when number of jobs are more. So you just wait, use some weights or normalize it. Okay, but just think of this way, that two ways, I'm repeating, that two ways scheduling decisions are made. First is based on some prioritization right in the beginning, the OS does. And second is, if it's a more important job, it will get more time slice. Okay, it's less important or less prioritized and less time slice. And second thing is that when the job can be picked up from a ready queue, that depends on which has run the least. Now we can see it's absolutely fair algorithm. Okay, all right, please go through it. You will just think about it, because it takes time to understand it, because it's slightly, there's a deviation from what we have been studying so far, but it's very interesting. All right, so please go through it. And just want to conclude with this slide. Please go through it, and we can see that this considered to be very fair. Linux CFS is considered to be very fair scheduling algorithm. Okay, rest of these things we have already studied so far. All right, so thank you. I think I've taken a little extra time. Thank you. Bye-bye.